Hello, my name is Dr. Adam Nally. I'm coming to you later in the evening on a Tuesday, but I wanted to talk to you about weight loss stalls. This has been a topic of discussion in my office with a number of patients over the last few weeks, actually. I know it's been a topic among a number of talks through a number of the ketogenic conferences around, and I wanted to touch base for my patients and help them to understand what specifically causes a weight loss stall when you've been doing a ketogenic diet. And so I thought I would dive into it. To tell you a little bit about who I am, my name is Dr. Adam Nally. I'm a board-certified family medicine physician and a board-certified obesity medicine specialist. I've been in practice about 20 years, and I've been applying ketogenic lifestyles, low carbohydrate, ketogenic, low fat, or low carb, high fat diets with my patients for over 15 years. And have been doing it myself as well as with patients, thousands of patients in my clinic. I practice in the northwest corner of Surprise. If you're logging into us and you're new to these broadcasts, or you're seeing this on YouTube, please put a 1 in the chat bar so I know that you're new. If you've seen these broadcasts before, put a 2 there and tell me where you're from so I know where you're at. Hello, Kim from Colorado, and hey, Robin, how are you? It's good to have you guys here. So what I thought I would do, I'll take that off the screen there so you can remove that, and I'll put my name on here real quickly so you know who I am and what I do. Like I said, I'm a board-certified family physician and a board-certified obesity medicine specialist. So what I wanted to talk to you about is really what causes a weight loss stall. In order to understand that, it's important for us to understand a couple things. Number one, the body is always in homeostasis. It wants to maintain something called homeostasis. And what that means is essentially the body doesn't want to change. It wants to maintain its current status quo, and it likes that, and that's important for it. And so anytime you change your caloric intake, anytime you change the volume of food, anytime you change your activity level, anytime you change any of those things, your body's going to attempt to regulate its balance of weight and muscle and fat because it's safer that way. It's a safety issue. It's a safety mechanism. So the body attempts to regulate it. So when we try to rapidly lose weight, the body doesn't like that, and its hormonal systems were designed to counteract that in a really important way. Fat loss is really about biology and hormones. It's not about physiology and math. And unfortunately, you're going to hear, and I've heard from the pulpits of many conferences with so-called experts that it's a caloric issue, that you have to have a negative energy balance to get the weight to come off, and so telling a person that they're not losing weight because they're not in a negative energy balance is like saying to a person, well, Bill Gates is rich because he just spent less than he earned. That's a real simplification of what this is. It's also like saying, well, you have a fever because the body couldn't dissipate the heat fast enough. That's actually not true. And in either case, with Bill Gates, he actually provided a tremendous, it still does, created a company that has multiple whistles and bells in it that drives a profit. And with a fever, this is the body's response to an offending organism or agent in the body, and it's a series of hormonal steps that the body uses to protect itself or defend itself. So saying you're not in negative energy balance is a very, very poor simplification of a very complex system. So I wanted to talk about the complexities of that and try to identify if you're in a stall, why are you in a stall, where are you at in that stall, and try to eliminate the possibilities, the maybes, and all the comments that I hear and I read on blogs and things of that nature. So I realize it's late tonight. For those on the East Coast, it's probably midnight or 12:30. Here in Arizona, it's about 9:30 p.m. So, after getting everything done, this is about the only time I had to do this. So, I wanted to do it, and I thought I would try to get it up on Facebook and then on YouTube a little later. And so I've got a couple of notes I may refer to here. Step number one, you may be taking in too many carbohydrates. If you're not seeing weight move, it's maybe that your starch intake, your carbohydrate intake is too high. I'm going to try to pull in here a slide deck, and this is and I'll shift this so maybe you can see it a little. That didn't work so hot. How about this way? All right, so this is a fat cell, and hopefully you can see my mouse. The adipocyte is the fat cell, and this is a complex series of basically 5 doorways in and out of the fat cell for free fatty acids or triglycerides. Triglyceride is the basic passenger inside the cholesterol molecule, and the free fatty acid or the triglyceride, it's 3 chains of fatty acids, enter into the fat cell, and that's how they're stored. So as you can see right here, insulin is the primary hormone. And it's the first step. When insulin goes up, and if you remember with insulin resistance, you're overproducing insulin in response to starch. So if you give me a piece of bread, I overproduce insulin up to 10 times the insulin in response to that bread. So if you give a person who's overweight a piece of bread, they're going to produce 10 times the insulin. Well, that insulin, if it's in red here, has a suppressive effect on cyclic AMP, and that suppressive effect actually slows down the release of free fatty acids from the fat cell and allows fat to enter the fat cell at a more rapid rate. So insulin stimulates the entry of fat into the fat cell and stops the exit of fat from the fat cell. The other thing that does is it actually has a dampening effect on leptin. So it lowers leptin and actually increases your hunger. So that's why when you eat the donut 2 hours later, you crave another donut. Not that you're hungry, it's because leptin dropped and you've actually slowed down the exit of fat from the fat cell, and the fat cell starts to get bigger. Now, the challenge is that if you do this, and if you don't fix the high insulin load, none of the other doorways in the fat cell will be effectively improved. And so that's a big challenge. So if you're eating more than, with my patients, if you're eating more than 20 grams of carbohydrate, you're probably not going to see this insulin level go low enough to see success. Now, if you're a bodybuilder and you're an athlete and you don't carry a lot of fat, there's a lot more wiggle room in regards to that factor, and exercise plays a role. And so you see a lot of bodybuilders say, oh, it's not the insulin resistance is not a big issue. But for those of you that are seeing me in my practice who have failed every diet under the sun, myself included, you got to lower the insulin first. That's actually step number one. So it's really, really important you do that. So what kind of carbohydrate sources do I see that sneak in there all the time? Well, number one, nuts. Nuts is a big factor. Macadamia nuts, walnuts, almonds are the lowest in carbohydrate containing foods. They're usually about 4 to 5 grams of carbohydrate though per 15 to 20 pieces. So if you have a handful of macadamia nuts, about 15 of them, that's 4 grams of carbohydrate right there. And if you do, 4 handfuls of macadamia nuts, you hit your 20 grams of carbs. I have people that snack on nuts all day long, all sorts of nuts. Peanuts are some of the highest in carb in their response with both inflammation and carbohydrates, as well as mixed nuts. Those are up to 10 grams per serving, or 30 pieces essentially. So nuts play a big role. And if you're trying to lose weight, my suggestion is get rid of the nuts. Number 2, starchy vegetables. If it's a leafy green, then it's made of cellulose, and our bodies don't break that down. But if it's not a leaf and it's not green together, then it has some starch in it. And that's usually about 10 grams of carbs per cup, not cooked or raw, and it's about 10 grams of carbs per half cup cooked if it's not a leafy green, because you activate the starchy double bonds that are there, and you get some access to some of those sugars. So it's important to realize that's the case. And avocados, 20 grams of carbohydrate. Now I'm talking about a big avocado that we see in Arizona. If it's smaller, it's probably a little less. I posted a slide up on, I think it was Facebook a while back, and I had a bunch of people get really mad because avocados don't have 20 grams of carbs in them. The equivalent response of the body is about 20 grams. Now, some of that's fiber. Some of us process that fiber. Some of us don't. There's an argument by one of the nutritionists that said, oh, it's only 12 grams or 10 grams. Yeah, but some of us who are really insulin resistant and actually ferment some of that starch actually do get some carbohydrate from it. And so when I see my overweight patients, if they eat a whole avocado, I tell them it's equivalent to about 20 grams of carbs. One whole avocado is equivalent to a piece of bread. I equilibrate that because that's what it inhibits patients' weight loss by. So be careful with that, because avocado is actually a fruit. Be wary of fruit. Most fruit in the packaging the good Lord put it in is going to be roughly 15 grams equivalently of carbohydrate. It's a fructose, yes. And does it raise the blood sugar? Not very high, because fructose is processed 100% to the liver. But the processing in the liver, just like alcohol, raises insulin 3 to 5 hours later. And so that plays a role. And as you can see, insulin right here is this factor. When your insulin goes up, whether that's at the hour mark or the 5 hour mark, it's going to increase fat retention and slow fat release from the fat cell. So really important to understand, key to recognize in that regard. So low carb, excessive low carb foods, that's going to be cheeses, sauces, dressings, marinades, flavors, flavored coffee. Had a couple patients come in and they're using their Irish cream flavored coffee. That's their instant coffee, and that's got starch in it. It's got a form of maltodextrin, and that will inhibit your weight loss. So something to be aware of. If you have soups, if you're at a restaurant, you have soup, often they'll use flour to thicken the soup. So be aware of that. Creamy sauces, they do the same thing. So carbs sneak in. And so if you're going over that carb content, then you're gonna have a problem. So yes, count total carbs, as Tracy said. Unless it's a leafy green, I don't worry about it. But any other carbs, I highly recommend that you count all the carbs in them, and you avoid the starches. Now I'm gonna try to answer questions when I finish this. So if you got questions, hang on to them. I'll answer them at the end, but I want to be aware of that. Nut flours, yes, nut flours can play a role, as Tracy pointed out there as well, because they are, although they are a fiber. If you are a great fermenter in your gut, you'll break some of those bonds and access more carbohydrate than the average person does. So really important to understand. So too many carbohydrates, that's step number one. That's cause number one that I see commonly. Cause number two, people come into my office saying, well, I was told by my trainer that I'm eating too many calories. There is no calorimeter in the body. Your body does not have a calorimeter. There's nothing that measures the overall calories. Your body measures its need for storage of fat based on number one, insulin, and then number 2, 3, and 4, and 5. I'm going to show you here in a minute on regards to how the body empties or stores that fat. But there is no calorimeter, and calorie restriction. As I've actually looked over a number of blogs. I actually Googled the top 10. Reasons to stall on keto today, just looking to see, and every one of them listed calories as number 2. You're taking in too many calories. Unfortunately, that's a bunch of hogwash. There is no calorimeter in the body. Our body functions off of hormone responses. Now, can you talk about hormone response related to calories? You can, but the problem is that there are 3 laws of thermodynamics, there's 4, but there's not one. The first law of thermodynamics says that energy cannot be created or made, and you just transfer that energy. But that's in a closed system. We have 38 different hormones that affect our body's ability to store and release fat. So when those hormones are on and off, that essentially means you've got 38 different boxes that have to be on or off at the same time to be equivalent to a single calorimeter burning calories. And that's actually not true. Second, the law of thermodynamics talks about the fact that it's a closed system, and our bodies are not a closed system. They really aren't. We dissipate heat at a different rate, depending on our skin and hair and things like that. If I have more hair on my head today, I dissipate heat at a slower rate than if I shave my head. So there's a whole slew of things that make that law of thermodynamics and calories an inappropriate way to make you feel like you're failing with your weight loss. So don't worry about the calories. I tell people, don't worry about it. Macros is just another way to make you think about calories, and it's stupid. Your body will change as you go through this process. And 5 macros of carbs when you started is not 5 macros of carbs 2 weeks later. 15 grams of 15% macro on protein is not 15% later, because your muscle mass is going to go up and down. And so I don't like macros. I don't like calories. I tell people, start number 1, cut the carbs less than 20 grams per day. So number 2, we're going to talk about protein, but you need to calculate your protein need based on your height and your activity level, and then use that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The challenge is that we are so indoctrinated into the calorie being the king that it's infiltrated into the ketogenic world, and it doesn't need to be there. So I have so many patients come to me that are so confused because they've had all the keto experts and their trainers just confuse the snot out of them. So be aware of that. Important to understand. Next, your insulin level is too high still. Again, we're coming back to this insulin. So I'm going to show you this picture again here. Let me pull it up right here. So insulin, this insulin factor right here. So carbs raise insulin, but there are other things that raise insulin. So what else can raise it? Sweeteners. I wrote a whole article in my book, The Keto Cure, about the stimulus of insulin without raising blood sugar by almost every sweetener that's under the sun. There are really only 3 sweeteners that don't raise your insulin. That's going to be only one of these sugar alcohols called erythritol. All the rest of them raise insulin. Chicory root, which is actually an oligosaccharide. And lastly is liquid stevia, and sucralose in liquid form. There's actually 4 of them. Those don't raise insulin. And the studies have been out there since they've been studying these sweeteners since the 50s. And you can see some of them are just mouse studies or rat studies. Some of them, there are not human studies and others, but most of these sweeteners will raise insulin. And it's not because of the taste under the tongue. It's because they actually stimulate an insulin response. But so like I said, the 4 that don't do it are on my blog at docmuscles.com under the freebies, or you can find the whole chapter in my book. But those are there. So most sweeteners will raise your insulin. I have a lot of people that come into me and they're using xylitol. I have a lot of people that come to me, they're using Monk fruit, which is a fructose. Doesn't raise insulin in everybody, but about 50% of people I see it does, myself included. So you've got to be careful with these sweeteners because they will actually raise that insulin and halt your weight loss. And if your insulin's high, you're not losing weight no matter what you do. Next, other hidden carbs that may be there, and we talked about, too many nut flours, things of that nature. If you're eating a bunch of keto treats, you're going to raise your insulin because those nut flours, after a certain point, do actually cause an insulin response. And if you're highly insulin resistant, meaning you produce 20 times the insulin in response to those foods, it may be enough to stop your weight loss. So be aware of that. Very important to understand. Next, too much protein. Now, I know there's argument about the protein issue. I know there's some great ketogenic docs out there that have argument about protein on and off. My comments to you today come from 15 years of experience in treating patients with obesity and treating patients with weight and diabetes. What I see is when people overdo protein in the obese state or in the diabetic, the pre-insulin resistant state, that protein can halt or slow weight loss. Protein does have an insulin response to it. It's mild, but it's still there. And so if you overeat protein, then you can slow your weight loss. Now, as you become leaner and leaner, as you become less and less insulin resistant, protein has more of a little bit of a give and take. And our bodybuilders actually need more protein. So if you're a bodybuilder, or you see these folks on Instagram that have these physiques that are just amazing, they actually need more protein to, number one, maintain the muscle mass, but number two, they're not insulin resistant as you and I may be, and they actually have a little more wiggle room because of that. And then third, if most of these guys are working out 2 and 3 times a day for about an hour to 3 hours a day, and they're blowing through that protein and they need that extra protein. So be wary that if you're obese, you're overweight, and you're trying to lose, we want to control that protein and bring that protein back down. So very, very important. The challenge I find with carnivore is a lot of people are overdoing protein with carnivore because they're pushing the heavy meats. You need to realize that you need to eat to satiety. And I'm a fan of carnivore. I don't mind it. And I have a percentage of patients that do really well with it. But you also need to realize that a lot of those patients don't do well because they may be overdoing too much protein. And so that is a factor I see in my office with weight loss. And weight loss is one of the things that we do a lot of in the office. So be aware of that. So I would say initially track your meals, track the amount of protein you're taking in. I'm a 6-foot guy. I need roughly 90 to 110 grams of protein per day. So if you divide that out, if I'm exercising heavily, I need about 110 grams. If I'm not exercising, I'm sedentary, I need probably 85 to 90 grams. And so the calculations are on my website at darkmuscles.com. If you go to the blog section and type in protein, it'll give you the calculations. If you have my book, it's in the book. So be aware that those calculations are there. And I've actually done two videos on YouTube that are there as well. So you can check those out for that calculation, so you're able to do it. But adjust that protein as necessary based on your exercise levels and how much you're active. On the flip side, not enough protein will halt weight loss because your body thinks it's starving. When you become nitrogen imbalanced, you have protein malnutrition, your body will stop losing weight because it doesn't want to lose muscle. And so you've got to take in enough protein. I have a lot of people that come from a vegetarian or vegan world, and they're just afraid of protein and fat. And so they cut the carbs back, but they don't add protein and fat back, and their weight loss halts. So you've got to add enough protein into your system to be able to be okay and do that. So really important. Next, too much fat. The too much fat factor. Fat also can have a slight insulin response. So that's one issue with too much fat. But the second thing, and I don't show it here on the slides with these images, but after about the 3rd month, you become really, really efficient in keto adaptation. What that means is that after the 3rd month, you become really effective at absorbing fat into the bloodstream and then having that fat float through the bloodstream. When the fat's in the bloodstream, it turns into chylomicrons and then forms of cholesterol, and then it floats through the system. And it's either being used by the liver or it goes directly to the fat cell. It has to be cycled through the fat cell to be used appropriately. So the body then has to use that fat. If you're loading up extra fat in your coffee, in your food, if you're slathering everything in butter, you may be putting too much fat into the system. And when you keto adapt after the 3rd month, most of my patients, when they start doing this, they lose weight like it's going on like gangbusters for the first 3 months. And then around the 3rd month, all of a sudden that weight loss halts. And when we go through their notes on their diet journals, they're actually putting MCT and ghee and butter in their coffee. So there's actually probably more fat in their coffee than there's coffee in their coffee. Be aware that that's going to halt your weight loss unless that's your meal. Now, a lot of people say, well, I just drink it because I like it. Well, if it's not a meal, don't put fat in there. So step one, lower the carbs. Step two, get the protein you need. Step three, make sure that your protein to fat ratio is roughly 1-to-1. If you eat red meat, pork, bacon, egg, sausage, the way the good Lord made them, they're already 1-to-1. You don't have to add any additional fat to it. If you're having chicken, fish, and turkey, you probably have to add a little fat to that. But because we want your fat level somewhere between 60 and 70% fat for the most part. If it's lower than that, you may not see success. If it's higher than that and keto adapted, you'll probably see the weight loss halt. So very, very important to see that and to do that. Very important. If you're getting up in the morning and your weight's not moving, then you may want to eliminate the fat out of your drinks in the morning, and then eat when you're hungry. If your meal filled you up and you're not hungry till noon, don't eat till noon. A lot of us eat because we think we have to eat, 3 to 5 times a day. We eat because we think that we were bored, or we eat because we're stressed. Those are all reasons that people eat. I want you to eat because you're hungry, not because you're bored or stressed or you think you have to. So when I get up in the morning, I'm not usually hungry till around noon or 1 o'clock, and that's my first meal. Second meal is usually at dinner time, and then I'm usually full for the rest of the day until the next day around noon. If I eat breakfast, it actually halts weight loss, and I may see some weight gain in that regard because of the excess protein and fat that's there. So very important in that regard. Chicken thighs, too much fat? No, they're actually usually great. You can use the breast. That's perfect, Marianne. Anyway, so balance the protein with the fat, 1-to-1 ratio. I've talked about this before in other videos. I talked about it with the keto adaptation video. Important to see there. But the next piece that I want you to look at, and let me pull up my reminder here so I can remind myself what I'm doing. Too much alcohol. Now, there is some wonderful marketing out there from some good people that want to sell their alcohol, telling you that their alcohol has less carbs in it than everybody else's, and it's great for keto. It's not so great for weight loss. Maybe great for maintaining ketogenesis, but if you're trying to lose weight, you got to cut out the alcohol. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Cut it out. Had a patient that came in this week that basically I told them they had to cut their alcohol out, and they got upset and left and couldn't get the weight to move in any other way. They're back in my office, and they finally decided to cut out the alcohol. Some alcohol has carbohydrate in it. That carbohydrate is going to spike your insulin. But remember, alcohol was a sugar before. It's now a toxin. You put it in your system, and your liver has to detoxify it. The process of detoxifying alcohol produces insulin 3 to 5 hours later, just like fructose. Alcohol and fructose, the sugar that's found in fruit, is processed 100% in the liver, and insulin production is a byproduct of alcohol metabolism. Now, how much insulin do you produce is variable based on the person. Some people produce more, some people produce less, but alcohol will release insulin, and that will halt your weight loss, period, end of story. If you want to lose weight, get rid of the alcohol, period. I'm just going to be frank with you. That's what you got to do. Next, lack of sleep. If you feel stress, if you lack sleep, your cortisol rises. Cortisol stimulates your liver to produce glucose, and that glucose stimulates an insulin response. And again, you shut down fat loss. So you need to get adequate sleep. You need to reduce the stress in your life. And there's a couple of things we can do to help that, but that's important because that cortisol, that stress actually raises insulin, and that's important. I'm going to pull this slide deck back up so you can see again. The next is lack of catecholamines. Now, I usually start with patients and teach them how to do the diet, and then after the second or third month, they actually start feeling like exercising. Step number 2, and I kind of skipped it, is thyroid function. Your body needs to convert the T4 hormone and the thyroid to T3. Number one, you got to make T4. So if you're hypothyroid or you have a high insulin level, it actually stimulates insulin antibodies and increases the risk of thyroiditis. And then insulin also suppresses this type 2 deiodinase enzyme right here, converting the T4 to the T3. T3 is the gas pedal for the fat cell that opens it up and lets fat empty out. And so if you can't convert your T4 to your T3, you actually will not amplify the release of fatty acids from the fat cell. That's where the thyroid is so important. You've got to have adequate thyroid function with both T4 and with T3. Next is exercise. Exercise plays a huge role in releasing epinephrine and norepinephrine. Number 3, these are called catecholamines. And if you're even taking a walk, releases epinephrine and norepinephrine. These actually stimulate the 2 different pathways in the body, both cyclic AMP and cyclic GMP, allowing 2 different pathways to open up doorways in the fat cell, letting fat exit. If you're not moving, you're probably not going to be as efficient in emptying the fat from the fat cell. So you guys see me on Instagram, I exercise. And one of the things I found, you can lose weight without exercising, but you can't really tone up well and get rid of those last 20 or 30 pounds without adding exercising in some capacity. So you gotta do that. It's actually very important. So I would encourage you to consider some form of mild to moderate exercise and work your way up there, because that releases the catecholamines, which is door number 3 for the fat cell to release fat. Door number 4 is going to be testosterone. Now, the challenge is that about 60% of the guys that I see in my office who have insulin resistance have low testosterone. Women have a flip side. Their insulin resistance stimulates them to drop their estrogen and raise their testosterone. For whatever reason, it has a flip effect as well. Testosterone can have a positive and negative effect on the fat cell in releasing hormone, both from the beta adrenergic receptor and the alpha adrenergic receptor. So testosterone, when it's in the correct levels, will stimulate cyclic AMP. But when it's too high or too low, it will actually shut down cyclic AMP, so you can't release fat effectively. So we want to get your testosterone in the right range. And if you have excess estrogen because of excess insulin, which is a driver, insulin drives what's called estrogen dominance, both in men and women, that will inhibit door number 4, and you can't get the fat to exit. So we want to ensure that you're lowering the insulin, that you're having adequate exercise, and you may need to have your hormones checked by your doc to find out if your levels are appropriate for those sex hormones. That's important. Lastly is sympathomimetics. These are there's a couple ways that these are effective. When you shift into ketosis, the ketone itself stimulates the cyclic GMP pathway and actually amplifies leptin. So it suppresses your appetite, and that ketone actually stimulates cyclic GMP to allow for increased release of periliptin and increased release of free fatty acids from the fat cell. Ketones and short chain fatty acids, butyrate, which comes from butter, stimulate this alternate pathway and drive that other pathway in releasing the fat cells, so fat from the fat cell. So being in ketosis is important. So being able to check your ketones and make sure those ketones are above 0.8, somewhere between 0.8 and 1.1. People come in and say, well, Dr. I'm in ketosis and I'm just not losing weight. Well, how do you know? Well, I pee on the pee sticks and there's a slight pink color. That tells you absolutely nothing. Those urine test strips are worthless after the second month. I want to know what's your actual number. What's your millimoles of ketones, and how often are you in that ketogenic state? Somewhere between 0.8 and 1.5 millimoles per deciliter. If you're in that range, I know you're actually activating this second pathway in the fat cell and you're releasing the cyclic GMP. That's really, really important. So if you've got the funds to purchase the test strips, great. Do you have to have the blood test strips? No, you don't. But this is one of the things that I'm going to probably ask or want to check periodically. If you show up in my office and you're going, I can't lose weight, Dr. Nally, I've stalled. We're going to start with the insulin. We're going to check the thyroid. We're going to look at your sex hormones. We're going to look at your physical activity level. And I'm going to look to see, are you actually in ketosis, because of what it does to the fat cell and how it opens the back door of the fat cell. Now, in my office, we'll use some appetite suppressants like phentermine. It is a stimulant, and it also stimulates that fat release as well. That's why phentermine is effective in weight loss. And so with a few patients, we'll jumpstart them with that. But phentermine is a controlled substance, so you got to see your doctor for that. So that important things to understand in regards to weight loss and why weight loss stalls occur. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. We talked about, progesterone. Too little progesterone will halt the weight loss, and too much progesterone will cause weight gain. Most of you, if you've ever been pregnant, you know that, because your progesterone level goes up and you gain weight. It's part of the pregnancy process. We want that progesterone to stay balanced. Really, it's a progesterone-estrogen ratio, and that's really important. So you want to have that checked by your doctor if you're not seeing other factors that way. Those are really the probably, I think we talked about 8 different causes of weight loss stalls on a ketogenic lifestyle. So hopefully that helps you. Hopefully that gives you some answers. I'm going to post this up to YouTube as soon as it gets recorded and I can upload it. It'll be available on YouTube. It'll be on Facebook probably for about 24 hours, and I'll probably pull it off there, and it'll be available to YouTube. So check it out there. I'm going to try to scan back here through some questions, just to answer a few questions. I appreciate you guys seeing this. Please share this out. You have my permission to share it out to everyone and anyone. Yes, I'm on late. Because I had some stuff to do this evening, and so I'm a little later. But all right, so Debbie said, my ketones run between 0.5 to 0.6. we probably need to bring them up a little bit, Deb, and there's probably something that's inhibiting that. We want to get them to around 0.8. I find that the magic number is somewhere between 0.8 and 1.5, although it doesn't have to be there. That's usually where it's at. Jennifer says, super helpful. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that. I'm going to pop this up here so I can put some of these up on the screen. Lupe says, oops, let me see. Lupe said, I'm really having a hard time with sleep. The most I can get is about 5 to 6 hours, and maybe an hour nap. All right, so Lupe, let me back up and tell you, there is no magic number for sleep. If you sleep 5 hours and you're rested, that's all you need. We actually need less and less sleep as we age. So there's no magic number of 8 to 12 hours. You don't have to have that. If you feel rested, great. There is some anecdotal data about CBD oil helping with sleep, but it may have an effect on weight loss. There's no great information on that yet. If you're using THC with that with that CBD oil, it will halt your weight loss. I guarantee it. But when I say sleep, you want to be able to get restful sleep so that you're not sleepy during the daytime. Very important to actually look at that. All right, let me go back here. Find this. I'm going to take that one out. Let's see. That was Lupe. Ketone meter. Wynette says she has the Keto Mojo. That's great. It does a good job. A good testosterone range for women. For women, I want your testosterone around 20, Jessica. Around 20 is the magic number for total testosterone. Free testosterone, somewhere around 2 to 3 is where I want that at. Whoa, what was that word? I missed that, Tracy, so I'm not quite sure what the word was. Remind me there. Let's see, just opened door number 3 after losing 20 pounds. Exercise so much easier. Exercise really does help. Yeah, exercise plays a role. So you have to add that exercise in. Now, I have patients that can't walk. They have horrible arthritis. They can still lose weight with the diet, but to really truly see the toning and losing those last pounds, some form of physical activity that opens up that door number 3 really is important. Exercise helps relax. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, which doesn't make you sleepy. Is Pilates a good exercise? Yes. We actually find that resistance exercise is a more efficient exercise for weight loss over cardiovascular exercise. Some people enjoy running. My wife is a runner. She loves to run, and that's her therapy. And so if you like that, great. But resistance exercise actually improves the insulin resistance faster, if that makes sense. Yes, Tracy, go to Amazon. It's called The Keto Cure. Check out the book. It's great. Let's see. Third shift worker here. Will CBD oil hinder help sleep? As I understand it, CBD oil helps the sleep. It's outlandishly expensive. Insurance doesn't pay for it, but you might consider that as an issue. I'm not sure what multi-keto means by that, Tracy. Battleground Washington. Don't know what that means, Lisa. Let's see. Marianne says she has Hashimoto's. So again, lowering the insulin is the key there. Not enough sleep. So Deb, you got to get the sleep. Make it a priority. I've come to realize that sleep is important as making sure you're getting enough fat in your diet. It really is. It's that important. So yes, honor the sleep, says Wynette. Just going to be Deb with you, not Frank. Not sure what that means. Try to eat more healthy fats. Again, if you're eating chicken, fish, and turkey, add the healthy fats. If you're eating red meat, pork, eggs, you're getting the real animal fat. You don't need to add more. It's not necessarily important. Deb says she doesn't drink alcohol. Great. Wynette says she does 1 meal a day. That works as long as you're getting adequate protein. That's okay. Not eating breakfast, says Deb. Good. All right. Kenny says that you're always hungry, so you're probably not having enough protein, Kenny, and or enough fat. We want to make sure you're getting those balanced out. So check to see, are you eating enough fat for your height and or enough protein for your height and your exercise levels. Carnivore really is good for some. For me, I feel out of my mind. It's not necessarily the MTHFR. I think that some people actually process the starchy vegetables more, and it kicks them out of ketosis or lowers their level of ketosis, so they actually feel better when they have a lower intake of the starchy vegetables or the fibrous vegetables in that regard. But the leafy greens actually help the reabsorption of estrogen for those that are estrogen dominant. So I actually did a podcast with the two keto guys the Keto dudes, I think it just came out yesterday, and it's on their site where we talked about leafy greens and how they play a role with some people, and why I think that some people don't do well with carnivore because of that estrogen dominance issue. So something to consider there. What do I think of intermittent fasting? I think that if you're doing intermittent fasting, it's great. I actually tell people I want you to let your diet dictate the intermittent fasting, because if you're doing keto right, there will be periods of natural intermittent fasting. Now, if you want to fast longer, that's great. But what we find is that if you do more than a 3-day fast, it actually shuts down your testosterone production, and it slows down your thyroid function for literally 6 to 12 months. So these guys that are doing 5 and 10-day fasts, great, but they're doing it at the detriment of their thyroid in some cases, and that's what I've seen in my office clinically. So just be aware of that. I'm a big fan of eat when you're hungry, don't eat if you're not. Oftentimes that ends up to be 12 to 16 hours. Are chicken thighs too much fat? No, they're not. Hello from Seattle, says Tracy. She just counts the carbs. Hello from Texas, says Joyce. All right. Let's see. Can one get over insulin resistance? Yes, this was a question that popped up on my website or on my Facebook page. I was talking about the fact that insulin resistance is a series of stages, and insulin resistance starts 20 to 25 years before you ever become a diabetic, a type 2 diabetic. And your insulin resistance gets worse and worse as the fat cell gets bigger and bigger. As the fat cell gets bigger and bigger, it starts overproducing 8 different hormones that overstimulate the liver to produce glucose and dampen the effect of insulin on that liver. And that's where the insulin resistance comes from, because the pancreas starts producing more and more insulin to try to keep up with the liver and what the fat cell is telling it to do. So as that fat cell stays big and you're cycling fat through it, the fat cell can't shrink. Once the fat cell begins to shrink back down, it begins to normalize the production of those other 8 hormones, and you actually see a reversal of the insulin resistance. Now, you can reverse diabetes in a few months, but remember, diabetes is stage 4 of a 5-stage process of insulin resistance that started 25 years ago. So you can reverse the diabetes and get into stage 2 insulin resistant, but still be insulin resistant for up to 24 months. And that's why I see with a lot of people is that it may take up to 24 months to truly fix the broken insulin signaling, although that diabetes may clear up before that. So which is great. Somebody says, check the YouTube Berry Hack, which is actually carnivore, and he did a great job talking about that, and I appreciate that. He's very correct. Sometimes carnivore is the hack. So, and I'd say if you haven't tried carnivore, you might consider that, because you're actually, again, reducing the carbs so that insulin drops even further. Lynette says, not stalled, gained 5 pounds, not a lot, but I need to get back to gear. Sneaky carbs, yeah, it does it. All right, good questions. We talked about stress. Thank you, Tracy, for putting up the book. That's my book, The Keto Cure. Appreciate that. Jimmy Moore did the commentary on the side, and Maria Emmerich wrote 60 recipes for us for that book. And so I appreciate both of them for that. They did a great job there in that part of it. You're welcome about the information about the nuts. Macadamia nuts are great, but if you can't control your handfuls of macadamia nuts, I'd say avoid them like the plague, especially if you're trying to lose the weight. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you for chiming in there. Let's see here. Jonathan and Catherine from Brisbane, Australia. Oh, wow. I'm assuming it's tomorrow there in Australia, and it's probably around 10 o'clock there, I'm assuming. Tracy says, if I make something even for a month with nuts and flowers, the inflammation gets worse the next day. Yep, it does that with me a lot. Let me see if I'm going the right direction. I'm actually going backwards here. So, okay, cool. So I went back through those. Let me go see if there's any new comments at the very top here. I'm going to scroll up to the very top. Does L-carnitine help with fat release from the cells? L-carnitine actually stabilizes the mitochondria and helps it. Now, too much L-carnitine can have a mild insulin effect. I've seen that with some people, but L-carnitine can play a role in stabilizing mitochondria, so not too bad. Tracy asked about a big word. I think she meant Ayurvedic ass effect. I'm not quite sure what that was related to. Will I be at KetoCon this year? Yes, I will be at KetoCon. I'm not speaking, but I will be there. So yes, and I'll be there to hang out with everybody and listen to see what's going on there. Is it dangerous to eat a ketogenic diet but not be in ketosis? Well, if you're not in ketosis eating a ketogenic diet, you're not truly ketogenic. You're just going to gain fat. So I would say if you're not truly shifting in and out of keto on a regular basis throughout the day, or maintaining ketosis for most of the day, then that excess fat will probably cause weight gain, increase in cholesterol, and increased risk of kidney stones, gout, and high blood pressure. So be aware of that. Calm magnesium for sleep comes with melatonin. uses it at the begin. Okay, so thank you. Let's see. How will we know when you're alive again? Tracy, I'm trying to pick a day that I can do them consistently. Tuesday evening seems to be when I'm going to do the lives. That seems to be the day that works for me. But because of my weird schedule, sometimes I've got meetings and I may have to shift it. I'm trying to figure out how to spam out and say, hey, I'm going to do a live. Maybe what I'll try to do is pop something up on Facebook and Instagram that morning about doing a live that evening so you guys are aware of it. But probably Tuesdays or Wednesdays is what I'm going to try to do when I do the lives. And I try to put a new video up at least once a week, and they'll go to YouTube for sure. So you go to youtube.com/Dr. Nally, and that's my YouTube page. What hormone levels are balanced for postmenopause? Progesterone, testosterone, and the 2 estrogens that are what we want to see. Thyroid was checked a few months ago, 4.4 after 17 years of being in the 1.8 to 1.8 range. Rechecked last week, it was down to 2.7. I've been on 0.75 of micrograms of levothyroxine. Is a change like this normal? Well, Christy, not knowing your other history, something caused it to flux. It's hard to comment on that without actually knowing your history there, but I can tell you that in my clinic, I will usually try to keep people's TSH level less than 2.5. If it's over 2.5, they may struggle with weight loss. And so that's where we try to maintain that. Hopefully that answers your question a little more clearly there. Is there an age that's not safe to take hormones? Your body uses hormones your entire life. So if you need the hormone, they're always safe if you need them. If you don't need them, it's not safe. I don't know if that answered your question. Tracy's going to catch the replay. So right before I went into ketosis, there was a long word started with an S. I don't know what that word was. I don't even know what it was. Hopefully I'll remember it. I don't remember. Testosterone is always high. What can I do to lower it? Paola, if your testosterone is always high, that means your insulin's always on, and you need to fix your insulin. It also means that you're probably taking in way too much starch. And so there's some things you have PCOS. Read the PCOS chapter in my book to chat with your doctor about PCOS, because the use of metformin or berberine plays a big role in helping that too. So those are some things we want to discuss with your doc. You guys are very welcome. What's a good fasting insulin level? Asked Marianne. I want your fasting insulin below 5. Now the lab says up to 20 is normal. That's not normal. If you have a normal fasting insulin, it should be 5 or less. That's my goal for all of my patients in my clinic. And that's where I usually see the dramatic changes arise when they get that fasting insulin less than 5. And that can take 18 to 24 months to get there. So don't be impatient about that. All right, guys, I appreciate your signing in, all your great questions. If you're going to be at KetoCon in a couple weeks, I will be there and see you. If not, check out weekly, like I said, Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I'm going to try to do lives and pop one up each week. Yes, I'm still doing primary care in my office. I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm doing direct primary care with some patients that do that. Yes. And thanks, Tim, for asking that question. Will it help bone density loss? Yes, because the goal with a ketogenic diet is to stabilize the hormones. And if your hormones are stabilized, your estrogen progesterone levels are returned to normal. And that's what helps stabilize that bone density. You guys have a great evening. Remember, check out my website, docmuscles.com. Go to YouTube and subscribe if you haven't already. It's youtube.com/Dr. Nally. That's the link, and all my videos are there. You can subscribe there and watch those there. And check out my book, The Keto Cure. You can find it on Amazon, or you can buy a signed copy from us online at docmuscles.com there as well. Candace says no online option for consultations. I don't, because of the state of Arizona and the regulation in medical consultation, I have to actually see you physically in my office. I do telemedicine visits for those that I've seen in my office at least once a year, but I have to establish a face-to-face relationship with you. I do have what's called the Keto Clan, which is a VIP concierge service. There's 2 components to that, which you can check out on my website, docmuscles.com/membership, which gives you access to a private Facebook group where you can ask a bunch of questions at any time. You get access to 12 modules that are on my website that are designed specifically to really help fine-tune a lot of the stuff we've talked about here. And so that's what those are. So check that out. Go to docmuscles.com/membership, and it'll tell you about those membership options that are there. There's a bunch of great people that are a part of that Keto Clan private Facebook group. They pop questions in there all the time, and we get the chance to answer back and forth. But specifically, the one-on-one consultation component, I actually have to physically see you at least once in my office, face-to-face. That's state of Arizona regulations, so I have to abide by those for licensure issues. You guys have a great evening. Paula said Paola? I hope I'm saying that right. Just started berberine and suspected PCOS. Yes. All right. So you guys have a great evening. Remember, keep the fat high, keep the carbs low. Check out my website, docmuscles.com. Go and register and subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Dr. Nally. Have a great evening, and we'll talk to you guys soon. And pass the bacon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.